Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. When my brother tried to ruin my career, I built a new path that left him behind. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I asked, my throat so dry the words scraped on the way out. I was sitting across from my manager, Katie, in a glass-walled meeting room that suddenly felt way too bright. She folded her hands on top of a printed email, the pages slightly crumpled, like she'd been holding them too tightly. The anonymous complaint, she said slowly, accuses you of stealing proprietary data, leaking client strategy, and padding your billable hours. And, she glanced down again, jaw tightening, of only getting promoted because you sleep your way up. My stomach lurched. I could actually hear my pulse in my ears. That's ridiculous, I managed. You know that's ridiculous. Katie didn't meet my eyes. The email is very detailed, Maya. It references internal conversations, specific files, and things that were said in closed-door meetings. IT traced the sender. The account originated from your brother's home internet. For a second, I genuinely thought I'd misheard her. The room went quiet except for the hum of the aircon and the muffled tapping of keyboards outside. No, I said, shaking my head. No. There's some mistake. Maybe his Wi-Fi was hacked or... My voice broke when my eyes fell on one line of the printout facing me. A direct quote from a private conversation I'd had with my brother, Liam, 3 months earlier, when I'd been nervous about leading my first big pitch. You told him that? Katie asked gently. About feeling out of your depth? About considering going back to grad school? I swallowed hard. My cheeks were burning. Yeah, we were close, I said. Katie exhaled slowly. HR has to investigate. You'll be on temporary suspension with pay until this is cleared up. I need your laptop and your badge. She pushed a yellow envelope across the table toward me, like it was a script, and I was supposed to just accept my role. My hands moved before my brain did, mechanically unclipping my badge and placing it inside. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I remember that detail because I'd started that morning thinking the biggest thing on my plate was a client presentation about toothpaste branding. I worked for a mid-sized marketing agency that loved to remind us we were punching above our weight. I joined 3 years earlier as a junior account exec, answering calls and making mood boards for other people's ideas. Liam had been the shining star there before me. He got me in. That's part of what makes this so twisted. Liam and I grew up in a small, noisy house where success was basically a second religion. Our parents immigrated with nothing, worked impossible hours, and raised us on the gospel of don't waste opportunities. Liam, 3 years older, was the golden child. Top of his class, charming, the kind of kid teachers wrote home about in glowing emails. I was the quieter one, more bookish, more likely to stay up sketching logos in the margins of my notebook than raising my hand in class. When Liam landed his first job at this hot agency, my parents talked about it like he'd been drafted into a Premier League. When I graduated with a marketing degree, he suggested I apply there too. I'll put in a word, he said, like a benevolent prince. But you have to deliver, May. They don't do charity cases. I did deliver. I worked stupid hours. I learned to read clients' faces in real time. I said yes to the crappy assignments no one wanted and quietly added value until people started noticing. Then, last year, one of the senior partners pulled me into his office and told me I was being promoted to account manager, skipping an intermediate step that most people, including Liam, had taken. I remember walking home that night with the city buzzing around me, clutching the offer letter in my bag like it was some precious artifact. Liam took me out for drinks to celebrate. We sat at a dim bar near the office, him in his usual too-tight shirt that he thought showed off his gym work, me still in my blazer because my hands were too shaky to deal with my coat. Proud of you, kid, he said, clinking his glass against mine. But there was something slightly off, a tension in his jaw. You must have really charmed them, or, performed well on that last campaign, I joked. We did smash the numbers. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Yeah. You had a good team. That was how it always was with him. Compliment, undercut. You're doing great, but remember who set you up. You're talented, but not that talented. Still, I didn't see the sabotage coming. There were small signs. A client once mentioned an odd email they'd received that seemed like it was from me, asking for updated logins at a weird hour. I brushed it off as a phishing attempt. A colleague made a joke about someone being jealous of my fast-track promotion, then clammed up when I asked who. At a family barbecue, my mom said, "Liam worries you're burning out. He thinks maybe management put too much on your shoulders too fast," in that tone that meant she agreed with him. The email Katie showed me was not small. It was surgical. It referenced exact file names I'd created, internal meeting notes I'd typed, doubts I'd confessed to Liam on our late-night balcony talks. It twisted everything. My idea to test a risky social strategy became reckless disregard for client brand guidelines. My decision to log a few extra hours one week to catch up became padding timesheets as a habit. And then the personal attack, that disgusting line about sleeping with my boss. The only thing it didn't have was a signature. That afternoon, after handing over my laptop and walking through the open-plan office with nothing but my handbag, I went straight to my parents' house. Not my best move, emotionally speaking, but instinct told me that's where Liam would be. When I pulled up, his car was in the driveway. He was at the kitchen table, laughing with my mom over something on his phone when I walked in. "Hey, superstar," he said, turning like nothing was wrong. "You look like death. What happened?" I dropped my bag on the floor. "Did you send an email to my manager?" I asked. "No hello, no softening." My voice came out flat, almost calm. He blinked. "What?" "An anonymous complaint," I said. "Accusing me of leaking data, inflating hours, sleeping with Katie. IT traced it back to your home internet, Liam. They have logs. They have timestamps." His expression slipped for just a second. His eyes flicked to my mum, who was now staring between us with a frown. Then he laughed. "Wow, that's quite the story. Are you okay? You look off." "Don't gaslight me," I snapped. The email quoted conversations only you and I had. In detail. Mum stood up, wiping her hands on a dish towel like prepping for a fight. "Maya, what on earth are you accusing your brother of? He has his own job. He's not sitting around writing emails about you." "I'm accusing him of trying to tank my career," I said, my voice cracking. "Because I got promoted before him. Because he can't stand that I'm not standing behind him clapping anymore." Liam's smile curdled. "You know what?" he said. "This is exactly what I told them might happen. You're in over your head, May. You've been spiraling for months. But sure, blame me. I'm the easy target." "You told them?" I repeated. "Told who?" He realized his slip too late. Mum's gaze sharpened. "Liam?" He ran a hand through his hair, exhaled dramatically. "I had a concerned conversation with HR a while back," he said. "Because I care more about her than she clearly cares about herself. I didn't send any email. Maybe they're just covering their backs and blaming an anonymous source." I laughed. It sounded a little hysterical. "They literally showed me the header with your IP address, you idiot." Mum slammed her palm on the table. "Enough," she snapped. "We're not doing this. Maya, you've always been sensitive. Liam has always supported you. This paranoia is not like you." I felt something in me crack. Not just from Liam's betrayal, but from the way my mother reflexively defaulted to his version of reality. Golden boy could do no wrong. I left before I said anything unforgivable. HR's investigation dragged on for weeks. They interviewed me, interviewed Liam, combed through my work. I handed over everything, my timesheets, my project files, even screenshots of texts with Liam where he'd asked oddly detailed questions about certain clients. IT confirmed the email was sent from his home network, from a newly created account that had only ever been used once. The official line after all of this? "We have found no evidence that you leaked client data or engaged in misconduct. However, we cannot conclusively link the email to any one individual. As a result, no disciplinary action will be taken against another staff member at this time." In other words, They believed me enough to not fire me, but not enough to take on my brother, a senior employee who brought in big accounts. I'd strongly recommend you consider whether continuing here is in your best interest, the HR director said at the end of our last meeting, in that tone that meant, please leave quietly so we don't have to deal with this anymore. I walked out of that office with my laptop, my badge, and the bone-deep certainty that staying would mean slowly erasing myself. So I quit. I wrote the most neutral-sounding resignation letter I could, thanked them for the opportunities, and CC'd it to myself, along with a little folder of HR case numbers, IT reports, and calendar invites showing who knew what and when. Just in case. The first morning I woke up without a job, I stared at the ceiling of my tiny apartment and felt equal parts fear and relief. I made coffee in the chipped mug my dad, the only truly neutral one in all this, had given me years ago that said creative genius at work. I wrote out all the things I loved about my job. Strategy, storytelling, helping small brands find their voice. I wrote out all the things I hated. Office politics, pretending everything was fine, constantly walking the line between my own ethics and what the client wants. A stupid idea surfaced. What if I did the parts one loved without the parts one hated? I shoved it away at first. Who was I to start my own thing? That's the kind of stuff Liam would scoff at after his third beer. Everyone thinks they're an entrepreneur now. But the idea kept coming back. I had some savings. I had contacts. I had proof I could deliver. And, apparently, no one else cared as much about my career as I did. So I sketched out a bare-bones plan for a small branding consultancy. Just me, freelancing, focusing on ethical, story-driven campaigns for small businesses who couldn't afford big agencies. I bought a cheap secondhand desk off Facebook Marketplace. I made a logo in an afternoon and hated it a week later. I built a basic website, rewrote the copy 12 times, and finally forced myself to hit publish. The first month was terrifying. I sent out cold emails. I followed up with every old contact who'd ever said, if you ever go on your own, let me know. Most didn't respond. A couple said, let's grab coffee, which led nowhere. I questioned everything. Was Liam right? Was I in over my head? Was I just proving everyone's worst assumptions true? Then, in the second month, I got an email from a client I'd worked with at the agency, a small eco-cleaning brand. The subject line was coffee. We met at a cafe near their office. The founder, a woman named Sarah, hugged me like an old friend. I heard you left, she said. Couldn't get a straight answer on why. But I remembered how you handled that mess with our last campaign, and thought, maybe you were someone who'd actually listen. We talked for an hour. She told me they were tired of being small fish at a big agency. I told her what I was trying to build. By the end of the conversation, she said, we'd like to move our account to you, if you'll have us. I went home and cried. Not because of the money, though, trust me, I needed it, but because someone who'd seen me in the environment my brother tried to destroy still chose me when given a choice. Over the next year, my little consultancy grew slowly but steadily. One client led to another. A local cafe referred me to a yoga studio, who referred me to a therapist's practice, who referred me to a small publishing house. Word of mouth did what no personal brand post ever could. I worked harder than I ever had, but it was a different kind of hard. I set my own boundaries. I chose clients whose values didn't make me feel like I was selling my soul. I made mistakes. Underquoted, overpromised, stayed up too late fixing PowerPoints, but each mistake was mine, not something someone else weaponized against me. I heard about Liam occasionally through family gossip. He was still at the agency. He'd been passed over for promotion twice, which Mum blamed on office politics and them favoring women now. Once, Dad called me and said quietly, I know things are bad between you and your brother, but I want you to know I'm proud of you. I see what you're building. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried after that call too. A year to the day after I walked out of the agency, I signed a lease on a tiny shared office space so I could stop working from my dining table. It was nothing fancy, just a room with 2 desks, a fern that I kept accidentally killing and reviving, and a window that looked out over a car park. But it was mine. That night, I poured myself a cheap glass of champagne, sat in my new swivel chair, and whispered, "You didn't ruin me, Liam. You just pushed me somewhere better." At that point, if the story had ended there, it would have been enough. But, of course, life doesn't end neatly. Especially not with family like mine. Let's just break this down mid-episode because the dynamics here are wild and very, very familiar. First off, Opie is the classic, quiet, competent one who only realizes how much weight she's carrying when someone tries to rip it out of her hands. She is not chasing conflict. She's not leaking emails, whispering at the water cooler, or doing petty power plays. She gets promoted because she's good, and in many families, that alone is enough to trigger someone like Liam. Liam is straight out of the Golden Child villain starter pack. He's the guy who loved being the only success story in the family and cannot handle that the younger sibling steps into the same arena and actually performs. His sabotage isn't impulsive, it's calculated. He uses intimate knowledge, her insecurities, late-night confessions, and twists them into evidence. That's not a moment of weakness. That's strategic cruelty. The parents are their own special subplot. Mom in particular is the embodiment of we will protect the narrative of the golden son at all costs, even if it means calling our daughter paranoid while her career is burning. It's painful because you can see OP still wants their approval. She goes there first. She confronts Liam at their table, like some part of her still believes she'll get back up. She doesn't. And the workplace? They do the bare minimum. Don't fire her, but also don't rock the boat by disciplining the golden boy rainmaker. Instead, they gently suggest she should leave. Corporate cowardice, 101. The satisfying part is Opie taking the shove and turning it into a launch. She doesn't just survive. She uses the world's worst reference letter, HR wants me gone, as the spark to build something of her own. Liam put a landmine in her career path, and she responded by building a completely different road. That's chef's kiss narrative symmetry. Okay, on to the messier, pettier, more satisfying part. What happens when success starts making the saboteur sweat? Update. Hi again. I didn't expect to be back with an update, but my family apparently runs on reruns and sequels. It's been about 2.5 years since I left the agency. My little consultancy isn't so little anymore. I've got a part-time assistant, a junior strategist I hired straight out of uni, and a designer who freelances for me regularly enough that we joke about printing her name on the imaginary office door. We're not rich, but the bills are paid, the invoices go out, and my clients recommend me to their friends. That's more stability than I ever had under someone else's thumb. The first time Liam reached out to me after the blow-up, it was through a LinkedIn message of all things. "Hey May," it said. "Long time. Congrats on the biz. Looks like you're doing well. Any chance you can grab coffee? Got a potential collab to discuss." I stared at it for a full 5 minutes. The audacity of a man who tried to nuke my career suddenly wanting collab. I didn't reply right away. I sent a screenshot to my best friend, Ria, with the caption, "Is he high?" She called me immediately, wheezing with disbelief. "Block him and go moisturize," she said. "You don't need whatever nonsense this is." But some stubborn self-preservation instinct wanted to know what game he was playing. So I agreed to coffee. In public. During the day. At a cafe, where I knew the owner. He showed up in a suit that tried too hard, fake casual smile in place. "Wow, boss lady," he said, looking around at nothing in particular. "I hear your name a lot these days." He did the whole performative small talk thing for a few minutes. "How's dad? How's the dog? Remember that time we flooded the kitchen as kids?" I let him run out of steam. "Why am I here, Liam?" I finally asked. His smile flickered. Direct. I like it. He leaned forward. "Look, there's a new client our agency is courting. They're big on authenticity, small business stories, your kind of shtick. I thought maybe we could partner. You handle the micro campaigns, we handle the big picture. Win-win. Could be huge for your little operation." There it was. The condescension, wrapped in faux generosity. I took a sip of my coffee to buy time. "You want me to attach my name and work to the same company whose HR basically suggested I leave after you tried to sabotage me?" I said. "Do they know about that part?" His jaw tightened. You're still hung up on that? He said. May, you were spiraling. I was trying to help. Whatever IT traced clearly wasn't me, or they would have fired me. Don't you think if they thought I did anything wrong, I'd be gone? They didn't fire you because you bring in money, I said. Not because you're innocent. He rolled his eyes. You've always loved making yourself the victim. That line hit a nerve it once would have sunk into. This time, it slid right off. No, I said. I just finally stopped volunteering to be the rug everyone sweeps things under. I gather my bag. There's no universe where I'm going into business with you. Or with them. Good luck with your pitch. For the first time since I'd walked into that HR meeting years ago, I saw something like panic in his eyes. Not guilt, not remorse, fear. The kind of fear people get when they realize the leverage they thought they had isn't there. A month later, I found out, via Sarah from the eco-cleaning brand, that the client Liam's agency had been chasing chose a smaller firm instead. Not mine, but another boutique. They didn't like the vibe, she said delicately. Too slick, not enough substance. My parents, meanwhile, stayed mostly the same. Mum still spoke about Liam in glowing terms and referred to my business as your little thing, unless she was bragging to a friend, in which case suddenly I was running her own company, you know. Dad walked a careful line, sending me quiet texts like, saw your client's ad, looks great, while never outright confronting the elephant in the room. The first real public crack in the family narrative happened at Dad's 65th birthday. We booked a private room at a restaurant. There was a long table, too many people, too much food. Liam arrived late, of course, with a bottle of wine and a loud story about some campaign he'd single-handedly saved. Mum beamed. I stayed near the end of the table with my cousins, talking about anything but work. At some point after dessert, one of my younger cousins, who's interning in marketing, piped up. So, Maya, my uni lecturer actually showed your cafe campaign in class last week, she said. Did you know that? She was talking about local branding. It was so cool. A few heads turned. Liam laughed. They're using local cafe ads in lectures now? Standards have dropped. My cousin's smile faltered. It was good, she said. Everyone thought it was really clever. Dad cleared his throat. It was good, he said, before Liam could say anything else. I see her work around more and more. Mum, sensing a threat to the established hierarchy, jumped in. Well, yes, but of course Liam's firm handles much bigger clients, she said. International, even. Totally different level. It was such an old script I could have recited it with her. For once, though, I decided not to let it slide. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the fact that my cousin had looked so proud of me, and I didn't want that light dimmed. Different level doesn't mean better, I said mildly. Just different. My clients actually know my name. There was a little ripple of laughter down the table. Liam's cheeks flushed. He put his glass down a bit too hard. Sure, but you wouldn't even have those skills if it weren't for the agency, he said. Or me. I got you in the door. And you almost slammed it shut on my head, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but the room went quiet around us anyway. Remember? Mum hissed, Maya, in warning. Liam smirked, but it looked strained. Are we really doing this here? He asked, still clinging to that conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory, I said. It's documented. IT reports, HR notes, timestamps. You tried to end my career, and when it didn't work, they nudged me out instead. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. I was just stating facts. A couple of relatives who'd clearly only heard the sanitized version looked between us with wide eyes. Dad stared down at his plate. Mum sputtered something about airing dirty laundry. Liam's mask slipped. If you'd kept your head down and been grateful, none of this would have happened, he snapped. And there it was. The thesis statement of his whole worldview. I pushed my chair back and stood up. You're right about one thing, I said. If I'd kept my head down, I'd probably still be at that agency, looking over my shoulder waiting for the next knife. Instead, I left. I built something I'm actually proud of. Clients come to me because they want my work, not whatever you can squeeze out of them. So you didn't ruin my career, Liam. You just made sure you'll never have anything to do with the one I have now. I kissed Dad on the cheek, hugged my cousin, nodded at Mum's horrified face, and left. I walked home that night feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I'd won some argument at a family dinner, but because I'd finally said the quiet part out loud. I owe you nothing. Not my career. Not my silence. Not my forgiveness on a timeline that's convenient for you. A week later, Dad came by my office with a bag of pastries for your team. He looked around at the desks, the half-dead fern, the whiteboard covered in scribbles. You really did it, he said quietly. Doing it, I corrected, because it still feels ongoing, fragile, and strong at the same time. He nodded. I'm sorry I didn't stand up more, he said, not meeting my eyes. Your mother. She has a picture in her head of how things should be. I didn't want to fight. I know, I said. And I did. It didn't excuse anything, but I understood. People like my dad survive by smoothing things over. People like me don't have that luxury anymore. We're not a Hallmark movie now. Liam and I aren't magically close again. Mum still makes snide comments about how stressful running a business must be, like she's hoping I'll admit I regret leaving the safe corporate nest. But there's a new variable in the family equation. My success is no longer ignorable. It's on billboards, in shop windows, on my clients' social feeds. It exists whether they approve or not. The biggest change is internal, though. When I think about my career now, I don't picture a ladder in someone else's building. I picture a messy, winding path through a landscape I'm still mapping. Liam tried to blow up the bit of road I was on. Instead of staying to fight him on that narrow bridge, I stepped off and found another route. He's still up there, guarding his piece of real estate, furious that no one is coming across anymore. And me? I'm down here, with mud on my shoes and sun on my face, walking my own way. Time for the full cast review, because this story is basically a character study in what happens when one sibling's entire identity is being ahead and the other quietly slips past on a different track. Maya, Opie, she starts as the classic people-pleaser in a high-pressure family, competent, hardworking, permanently under the shadow of "but your brother did it first." Her biggest flaw, if you can call it that, is that she trusts too much. She confides in Liam. She assumes HR will do the right thing. She thinks her parents will at least hear her out. They don't. Her growth arc is beautiful because it's not some dramatic personality transplant. It's a series of small, stubborn choices. She keeps her documentation. She walks away from a toxic job instead of clinging to it for prestige. She builds a business in tiny, unglamorous steps. By the time we see her at the final family dinner, she's still the same person. Soft-spoken, thoughtful, but she's no longer willing to be the rug. That's a quiet kind of badassery people often overlook. Liam, the brother, if narcissism and insecurity had a baby, it would be this man. His sabotage isn't just about jealousy, it's about entitlement. He genuinely believes he's owed permanent primacy in every space they share. Getting her into the agency becomes, in his mind, lifelong leverage. You wouldn't even be here without me. When she rises faster, instead of upgrading his own game, he tries to drag her down. The email is unforgivable, but what really seals his villain status is the complete lack of remorse even years later. He shows up not to apologize, but to monetize her success through collab. Even his big outburst, "If you'd kept your head down and been grateful," is so revealing. He doesn't want a sister. He wants a subordinate with his last name, Mum. She's not the direct saboteur, but she is the enabler-in-chief. Her investment in the golden child narrative blinds her to how grotesque it is to call your daughter paranoid when she's literally holding evidence. She diminishes Maya's work unless it serves her bragging rights. The tragedy is that she could have had 2 successful kids. Instead, her refusal to see Liam's behavior clearly costs her a deeper relationship with the one who's actually emotionally available. Dad. Perpetually on the fence, but at least he tries to step off it by the end. He's a classic conflict-avoidant peacemaker. Yes, He should have backed Maya more strongly earlier, especially during the HR mess. But his quiet support, the calls, the pastries, the "I'm proud of you," aren't nothing. He's the only one who seems capable of updating his internal narrative in light of new evidence. That earns him a passing grade. The workplace and HR. Honorable mention for spinelessness. They had enough proof to know something was rotten, but chose the path of least litigation. Keep the rainmaker, let the problem, employee drift away. It's gross, but it's also depressingly realistic. Big picture? This isn't just a revenge story, it's a boundary story. Maya's ultimate gotcha isn't exposing Liam to HR or humiliating him at dinner. It's living a life and building a career that he has zero power over. The best revenge, in this case, really is a life structured so the saboteur can't touch it, even if that means walking away from the ladder you were told was the only way up.